people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. It would seem that Mexico's newly crowned atomweight champion, young Camila Zamarano, will be returning to action early next year on the 21st of February at El Gimnasio Unison Hermosillo y Sonora. In defense of her newly obtained WBC title. Opposite the ring, Argentina's own veteran fighter, Claudia Ruiz. Young Camila sports a professional record of 13 wins with no losses and no draws, 1 recorded knockout. To Claudia Ruiz, who sports a professional record of 7 wins with 2 losses and 1 draw, no recorded knockouts, having been knocked out once in 10 professional bouts. Last in action in August of this year, opposite the ring, Mercedes Reina, who Claudia won a split decision against on the bounce. After having suffered 2 professional losses last year to Sol Kudos and Aldana Lopez, Claudia has fought 3 times since then and won 2. Drew with Jennifer Meza in June of this year, then fought again in August against Mercedes and beat her by the skin of her teeth. So now she's going to be facing young Camila Zamarano, newly crowned WBC atomweight champion, who had a productive year this year. She's already fought 3 times. 2 of those fights were with some very experienced fighters. Japan's own Mika Iwakawa, Sana Hazuki. These are fighters that are much older than young Camila Zamarano and have been around the block. Young Camila is only 17 years old, having just graduated from high school. 17 years old, only 13-0, and already a world champion. The stars just sort of aligned for Camila to pick up that WBC title. It's a byproduct of Tina Ruprecht retiring. 2-weight world champion Tina Ruprecht, who held the WBC title at minimum weight and subsequently moved down and became undisputed at atomweight. But after having become undisputed, Tina decided that she would call it a career on that and expand on her family. Currently, she's with child. She ended up dropping all of her alphabet titles, at which point Camila Zamarano was in the right place at the right time to pick one of them up. And currently, she's one of only 2 champions at this weight right now. The other is Spain's own Isabel Rivero, who holds the WBA title. The other 2, the IBF and the WBO, are currently listed as vacant. Normally, I would say that at 17 years old, Camila is far too young to have picked up an alphabet title and the responsibilities that come with it. But because this division is now an open book, well, it's different. It now gives Camila Zamarano the best chance at becoming the face of this weight class, being a fighter of Mexican descent, and one so young. Between Mexican fight fans being fiercely loyal and Camila Zamarano having a leg up on the competition, being one so young and already a world champion, already with a well-to-do promotional outfit, it's entirely possible that she could go on to become the most recognizable fighter at this weight, the face of it, and she's just getting started because she's got the Gabby Fundora thing going on, to where she's very tall and very long for her weight, taller than most minimum weights, towering over most of the girls at this weight, to where she could easily move up 1, 2, 3 weight classes, and she'd still have plenty of room to fill out. Because remember, at only 17 years old, she is still growing, and over time, she will fill out. There's genuine boxing acumen there. I've seen Camila fight, and she's very good, especially for one so young. I have high hopes for this fighter, who will now be returning to action next year in February in defense of her WBC title, and I just wonder how long it's going to take before Camila decides to unify titles, decides to pursue the other belts at this weight, because they're out there and they're up for grabs. In men's cruiserweight news, per veteran boxing scribe Mike Coppinger, Zurdo Ramirez's cruiserweight title defense versus Robin Safar won't happen January 16th. As planned, sources tell Ring Magazine Safar injured his hand in November and won't be ready to go in January. If the fight can't be rescheduled for February, Zurdo is set to fight David Benavidez in May. Safar is interested in fights with Chris Billa-smith or Ryan Rozicki. Adding to that conversation, another boxing scribe in Abraham Gonzalez who said, "Nothing that I didn't already report on this past Saturday via the fights at ATW, as Safar and his team are aiming for the fight to be on the undercard of Garcia versus Barrios." Just saying. Well, is Safar injured or not? It's the funniest thing. Safar is supposed to be the guy who's injured, but he's the guy who might end up fighting on, and Zurdo Ramirez would then presumably sit out until May when he's set to face David Benavidez, which I don't think improves his chances. Not at all. Zurdo is said to be coming off of a shoulder surgery. The fight with Safar was intended to be a warm-up fight to see how the shoulder feels and get him ready, tune him up. But if he doesn't have a tune-up in between his last fight and his next fight, he will have been out a long while, and you don't want to be shaking off ring rust in a David Benavidez fight, but that's how it looks, which really improves David's chances. That helps David. Common theme among Golden Boy Promotions fighters that they are both unpredictable and unreliable. When Floyd Schofield was supposed to fight Shakur Stevenson, but he pulled out due to some mysterious illness. Knows what the fuck it was. Ryan Garcia had one fight all of this year, a fight that he lost against Rolly Romero, then he sits out the rest of it. And I believe that Zurdo only had one fight this year, the mandated title fight with Uniel Dorticos back in June. That was the only fight that he had this year, then he sits out the rest of it due to this shoulder surgery. Unpredictable, unreliable. That's how the Golden Boy Promotions stable reads. In my previous video, we talked about the rumors that Golden Boy's relationship with DAZN is on the rocks. And in the summer of next year, DAZN may not renew. Amid rising tensions that Team Ortiz is making the Boots fight too difficult to negotiate, that DAZN is putting the squeeze on them, applying pressure, but Team Ortiz and Golden Boy don't want to play ball. This entire stable of fighters comes off as unpredictable and unreliable, so that if you're DAZN, you're wondering, why should we keep kicking out money to these people? We're not getting much back for it. Fights that are supposed to be theoretically easy to make between promotional outfits that are all on the same platform. The fight with Zurdo and Jai, the fight with Virgil Ortiz and Boots, none of which look to be happening. For Golden Boy Promotions, Ryan Garcia, via his social media following, is intended to be their ace in the hole, but that kid is far too unstable and not active enough. What did he have? Only one fight last year and only one fight this one? Yeah, that was it. The fight with Devin was the only fight that he had last year, then he got suspended for the Osterin, comes back, loses to Rolly, and that's all he did this year. So this kid can hardly be trusted to throw the banner on his back and carry it the way Canelo Alvarez did for so many years. He's intended to be Golden Boy's star pupil, star fighter, but he's too fucking unstable, unpredictable, unreliable. Back over to Zurdo Ramirez, who's supposed to be going into the biggest fight of his career against David Benavidez in May. Now that it's confirmed that Canelo Alvarez won't be returning on his usual May date, it does leave it open for David and Zurdo to use it. Why ain't Canelo coming back in May? Eddie Reynoso, Canelo's longtime trainer and manager, stated that he's gonna sit out all the way out until September to see if he can get a Terrence Crawford rematch. And I don't know if he's gonna get it, but that's what Eddie Reynoso said, leaving that May date open for somebody else to use it. Enter David Benavidez and Zurdo Ramirez. I'm not sure, but I believe that between Golden Boy Promotions and the PBC, they may bill it as a dual pay-per-view on two platforms. I believe they'll try to bill it as a pay-per-view on DAZN and Amazon Prime. It's how they're going to play it, I think. What I'm sure of is that they will bill it as a pay-per-view. It's not going to be a regular fight as part of the regular schedule. It will cost extra. And as stated, It doesn't help Zurdo Ramirez's chances at all that the night of the fight in May, he will have been out roughly 11 months, just 1 month short of a year, and coming off of shoulder surgery. If this plays out the way that the journos are saying it's going to play out, that Safar is going to fight somebody else. He might fight CBS, he might fight Ryan Rozicki, and Zurdo won't fight at all in the interim? That's not good. Not for Zurdo. Speaking of that fight, and the motion in the Cruiserweight division, veteran promoter Eddie Hearn doesn't believe David Benavidez beats Jai Opetaia and is unsure on Zurdo. Despite being crowned the WBC light heavyweight champion a few months ago, David Benavidez appears done with the weight division for the meantime, following his 7th-round stoppage win over Anthony Yarde on November 22nd at the A&B Arena in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Benavidez shared his next fight would take place at Cruiser against unified WBA, WBO champion Zurdo Ramirez in May. Ramirez was slated to return from shoulder surgery in a title defense with Robin Safar on January 16th, but that appears to have fallen through, which we just talked about in that scenario. Promoter Eddie Hearn likes his chances in a pick'em fight if he attempts to take on Ring Magazine and IBF champion Jai Opetaia, though. That's a different story. Jai Opetaia just fought a little over 2 weeks ago in defense of his title against his mandatory Hussein Sin Cara, who he stopped in brutal fashion. I don't think he beats Jai Opetaia, Hearn told The Ring. I think he could beat Zurdo, but I'm not so sure. Much like Benavidez, Opetaia is fresh off his own destructive victory, an 8th-round knockout of Hussein Sin Cara on December 8th, immediately after pleasing his hometown fans at the Gold Coast Convention Center. The Aussie called out Ramirez. I needed that humble pie. Watch this space. We want unification fights. Zurdo, I'm chasing belts. I've been asking for them for a long time, but we're gonna go back to the gym and sharpen up, he said, during his post-fight interview. Although widely recognized as the 2 best cruiserweights in the world, a fight between them has failed to materialize. Ramirez last defended his unified titles with a workmanlike points win over former champion Uniel Dorticos in June. In Hearn's ideal world, Opetaia and Ramirez would get it on next, but with Benavidez now readying himself to get his feet wet in the division, the longtime promoter believes an all-Mexican affair isn't a bad idea. Perhaps not, but it comes at the expense of his own fighter. They're freezing Jai Opetaia out. The Zurdo fight makes sense because it's 2 Mexicans, and he can become a 3-division world champion, Hearn added, and that's all well and good for David Benavidez, but if David Benavidez wins that fight, does he fight Jai Opetaia afterwards? By now it's established Zurdo isn't trying to become undisputed champion at this weight, not if he has to go through Jai Opetaia to do it. Zurdo is cold on that fight, and we can see that clear as day. But what about David? If David beats Zurdo, will he step up to the plate? Will he fight Jai Opetaia? The Cruiserweight division is a very top-heavy division, meaning that after you get past those initial names like Jai and Zurdo and David, the talent pool just sort of drops off after that, to where if David Benavidez wins and becomes unified Cruiserweight champion, he will not have an abundance of options moving forward to sell a bunch of pay-per-views and maybe try to become the face of boxing. Not at Cruiser. There's just not enough up there. Not enough for you to do that. And one of the only fights that can get you paid, seriously paid, is the Jai Opetaia fight. I'm fairly confident it's a fight that Turki El Al-Sheikh would put together, would pay for big money. Though, of course, there are the risks. There's a reason a lot of people are not in a hurry to fight Jai Opetaia. So the question is, if David beats Zurdo, does he then fight Jai after that? And if he doesn't, what does he do? Who does he fight? Because there's not a whole lot up there at Cruiser. Well, Samson Lukowicz, David's longtime handler, he did mention potentially moving back down to light heavyweight afterwards, but I've no stock in that. I don't think a guy who moves up to Cruiser is then afterwards gonna boil back down to light heavy if he's got 2 alphabet titles. I don't see it, but that's what they said. So Eddie Hearn looks at the Zurdo Ramirez versus David Benavidez fight as somewhat of a pick'em fight. In truth, for a period, I did too. Seeing the changes that Zurdo made to his repertoire, that he's not just a pressure guy anymore, he's getting on his toes, he's moving around, he's using the jab, working off the counter. He is a more streamlined fighter now than he used to be. And it's for that reason Eddie Hearn views the fight as a pick'em fight, because Zurdo is more of a boxer now. And I understand that, but these circumstances that the night of, Zurdo may not have fought in roughly 11 months, and he's coming off of shoulder surgery. I don't view it as a pick'em fight, where before I might have given Zurdo better odds. Here and now, based on this and these circumstances, I'm leaning towards David. And not only that, David's hand speed. I believe that David Benavidez is noticeably faster in the pocket than Zurdo Ramirez. Fast enough to beat him to the punch, mid-range to inside, if he can get there. Getting there will be the hard part. As Zurdo Ramirez, he may fight the fight on his toes, he may fight the fight on the move, try to set David Benavidez up. He's got a variety of ways of going about this fight, but mid-range to inside, so long as David can get there, I do believe he's got the edge in speed. I do believe he's noticeably faster than Zurdo, and I do believe that can make a big difference. I'm leaning towards David Benavidez to win the fight, which is saying a lot because I'm not a fan of David Benavidez's boxing, in case you haven't noticed. I'm nowhere near as impressed with this fighter as some other content creators are, but looking at the circumstances and what he brings to the table, he may have enough to beat Zurdo Ramirez. What about the weight? What about carrying all that extra weight? Don't you think that might slow him down? It's one way to look at it, but another way to look at it is a guy who gets as big in between fights as David Benavidez, boiling down to 175 likely takes more out of him than making cruiserweight. He might arrive at cruiserweight reinvigorated, energized, not having to cut all that weight. I mean, think about Zurdo Ramirez. Zurdo, as a cruiserweight, is actually lighter on his feet, more mobile, and more agile than he ever was at super middle, than he ever was at light heavy. At those weights, he used to stomp around like a Clydesdale. He had heavy feet at those weights, but as a cruiser, he's lighter on his feet. He's more agile, and maybe it's because he's not leaving as much in the gym to get the cruiser, and that rationale, that could apply to David. David and Zurdo were cut from the same cookie cutter. I mean, they're both built about the same. So if Zurdo can carry the weight, there is a chance that so can David. The guy's got about the same frame. He may be able to carry the weight at cruiser, the added weight, and keep his speed intact, not depleting himself to make 175. It could theoretically be a good fit for David. So the bottom line is, I don't think moving up to cruiser is going to slow him down. I don't think it's going to cost David his speed. I think he's still going to have it. He'll carry it up. I'm leaning towards David Benavidez to win the fight.